Hello, my name is Jason Odom. I'm part of group number one, along with Raya Walker, Fletcher Welling, Hannah Lowry, and Holly Bass. For the group project, we got the topic of horse slaughter. This specific presentation is for horse slaughter, and the group members that will be presenting this is Fletcher Welling, Hannah Lowry, and Jason Odom. How is horse slaughter done? So in this slide, I'm going to be talking about the process that is taken when it comes to processing these horses for consumption and being packaged to ship to other countries. Horse slaughter is usually done in slaughterhouse facilities. It's not done at ranches or farms. There are specific facilities for this to happen. First, horses arrive to the facility where the processing of the horses will take place. Once there, they're led down ramps into a feeding pen. From the feeding pen, they're led through a chute where an employee holds a pressurized gun called a captive bolt pistol up to the horse's head and shoots a 4-inch metal rod about the size of a roll of quarters into its brain. Sometimes it's also a machine that shoots the bolt. It's based off the facility and what the process is. But for the most part, it's the same thing. Once this is done, the facility hangs the horse by its hooves and begins the process of bleeding the horse. They do this so that the meat from the horse can be processed and packaged to be sold to countries like England, France, Spain, and many others for human consumption. Uh, why is horse slaughter controversial? Controversial. So in this slide, I'm talking about the controversy of horse slaughter and why it's such a big argument. Horse meat is the food of poverty, war, social breakdown, revolution. This means that for the most part, horses are only eaten in times of great struggle. I know in World War One that when there was no food or rations to be given out to soldiers, they would have to kill the horses for food for those soldiers. And then most of the controversy actually comes from the premise of these horses being killed for human consumption. With us not being in times of a great struggle, like in a war or no revolution or anything like that, people see that there's not really any need for us to eat horses and for other countries to eat them also, or for them to be slaughtered. In 2000, actually in 2000 and 2001, in Europe, the foot and mouth disease increased the demand for horse meat there since the cattle herds were decimated over there due to the disease. This increased demand drew attention and pushed animal rights and welfare activists to push federal legislation to ban horse slaughter in the U.S. So they're not able to be slaughtered on U.S. soil. One of the controversial subjects regarding horse slaughter is how it's done. There's argument that the facilities don't practice humane ways of slaughtering these horses. They think that since they're being treated wrong because they're just being killed, that there's no need for them to be treated in a fast and painless sort of way. Due to how skittish horses can be and how sensitive they are, they're able to really get a sense of what's happening while they are going through the process. They're able to see the other horses being killed, or they're able to smell the blood and different things that would add up to them being more and more nervous and skittish. Horse slaughterhouses in the U.S. In this slide, I'm going to be talking about the horse slaughterhouses facilities in the U.S. and what is the current situation with them. In 2007, courts upheld state-level bans on horse slaughter in Texas and Illinois, the last two states with horse slaughter facilities. With these being the last two states to have operational horse slaughter facilities, and with the bans being placed on the states, there are currently no more operational facilities in the U.S. at this time. Right now, only Texas, California, Illinois, and New Jersey have state bans on horse slaughter. This means that there could be a chance that horse slaughter can be continued in other states, though the likelihood of this is pretty low due to the provisions that are still being placed on it. Because of these provisions having to be renewed every year in 2011 to 2012 of that fiscal year, facilities in New Mexico, Iowa, and Missouri were able to receive permits from the USDA to continue operation at these facilities to slaughter horses. The year following this, the provision was renewed once again and has been renewed continuously since then up until today. Instead, horses are sent to other countries like Mexico and Canada to be processed for consumption by humans in Europe, and other foreign countries and continents.
The history of horse slaughter in the U.S. And if you didn't know, hippophagy is the practice of eating horse meat. The legal issues of horse slaughter for human consumption has been debated in Congress and the U.S. courts for many years now. It originally started in November 1998 when California would pass Proposition 6, which banned the slaughter of donkeys, mules, and horses, and also the sale of horse meat for human consumption. But because of the wording of the act, horses could still be exported and sold to other countries to then be killed, since they were not directly killing or selling the meat of the horse. And it wouldn't be till November of 2005 where the amendment to the 2005-2006 Appropriations Bill, otherwise known as the Agriculture, Rural Development, Food and Drug Administration and related agencies Appropriation Acts would all be signed into law. This would eventually lead to the closure of horse slaughterhouses because it made it so there was no federal money for the inspection of the horses and they would have to pay for their own inspections. More acts were introduced to try and end horse slaughter, such as the American Horse Slaughter Act, but it would end up dying in committee. However, a later bill was introduced that made it so there was no longer a ban on horse meat inspection. Now, when it comes to animal slaughter versus horse slaughter, I just want to put things in comparison. I can say confidently that no one is eating horse meat because it is not being sold. Since we mainly export the horses to Canada and Mexico, and on average we export about 80,000 to 100,000 horses a year up until about 2016, where that number drastically went down and averaged about 23,000. So because we're not the ones eating the meat, it's hard to make that comparison of why this horse is being sent to its death. You have to remember that there are people out there that need this food. And I don't want to say that because less have died, it's okay, but in just 2018 alone, we have killed over 6.8 million sheep, 3.8 million cattle, 123.6 million pigs, and almost 8 billion chickens. And many more various species, such as turkey and fish, are also dying in the millions and billions. So what I just mean to say is that we aren't killing horses in droves or by the masses, and the general horse population isn't taking a massive dive, and yet we kill and breed on an incredibly massive scale with numbers exponentially higher than that of the horse, and we simply turn a blind eye to it because we aren't benefiting from it by being able to eat it. We can't think of it as they simply die because they take up space. It serves a purpose and benefits people just like any other animal slaughter. The ethics of horse slaughter. The main reason horses are slaughtered is to be consumed, and we know that we in the US do not eat it, but so many various countries around the world consume horse meat, and some even as a delicacy. Many places, such as Japan, Belgium, France, Mexico, China, Switzerland, Kazakhstan, Germany, Indonesia, Canada, and Poland are all countries that eat horse meat. And so we know that we in the US have a general stigma about the consumption of horse meat, and you are allowed to be indifferent about that subject. But you have to at least recognize and acknowledge that horse meat is going to be consumed whether we like it or not. So is someone that consumes horse meat a bad person? And would we consider that morally wrong? Well, we know there are ethical ways to kill animals, so if that is enforced and you are in a country where you can go to your local store and they sell horse meat, should you feel bad about purchasing it? I think not. It's how you've grown up and it's how you've lived, and we can't say that they are doing something morally wrong because it's different from us. Now let me talk about the opposing view. One thing the opposing view or anti-horse slaughter advocates may argue is that horses should not be slaughtered because they are companion animals and display complex emotions. Well, I would first like to start by asking if you knew that guinea pigs are a common food in South America. You may ask, why am I talking about guinea pigs, but just think about it for a moment. Both animals are generally considered to be companion animals and are capable of forming a bond with them. While a bond with a horse may be more direct, you can't not acknowledge the bond a person can have with any pet. They both display surprising intellect, with guinea pigs being able to read signs in advanced mazes, and both display vivid emotions. Guinea pigs display extreme stress and can be very depressed. In fact, in Switzerland, it is illegal to own only one guinea pig on the account that it gets depressed without contact of its own species. And not to mention, the number of guinea pigs being eaten are millions more than horses. So with this information, do you now demand for proper guinea pig slaughterhouses? Do you not want them being eaten at all? Or do you not care? I think the answer really matters in how you actually feel when it comes to the killing of a horse, and if it's about the act of the slaughter itself or how much you care about the animal.
Culture surrounding horse slaughter. Horse meat was considered taboo in ancient Middle East because horses were a very important part of their society, and they were associated with companionship, royalty, and war. During the Enlightenment period, Napoleonic Wars, and the rising population of urban working horses led to European nations to experiment with horse meat. In Germany, horse meat was a high-value product during the agricultural revolution because it was a source of meat and it was associated with pagan religious practices such as the worship of Odin. Current events. Only 3 states have any sort of anti-horse slaughter laws: California, Texas, and Illinois. California only bans trade operations regarding live horses. Texas only prohibits the sale of horse meat, and Illinois was the first to explicitly ban the practice of horse slaughter altogether. These are only state laws. They cannot prevent horses from being shipped into different countries to be slaughtered. Only federal laws and other measures can prohibit horses from being sent across the border. Why the free-range horse model doesn't work. It is expensive to keep horses. The BLM, or the Bureau of Land Management, has off-range corrals that can hold approximately 50,000 wild horses in burrows every year. It costs roughly $50 million annually to house and feed them. It can control populations and prevent population booms. If not properly regulated, populations can get out of control. This can lead to inbreeding and competition for resources. Herds could potentially drain resources. The BLM budget is $1.2 billion as of February 2020. There is not enough land to support large numbers of horses. A good rule of thumb for pasture is to have 1.5 to 2 acres per horse. It can also solve the problem of old, injured, or unwanted horses. Some older horses require extra medical attention, which can add up in bills. 1.2 billion minus 50 million equals 1,150,000,000 left in the budget. 2 acres per horse times 50,000 equals 100,000 acres of pasture. Acreage needs to be rotated every 4 to 5 weeks, but needs at least 30 days of resting time or growing time before being used again. 4 to 5 weeks equals 12 months times 100,000 acres equals 1.2 million acres used every year. As a group, we believe that the stigma around horse slaughter and the consumption of its meat in the U.S. will not go away. Therefore, it does not make sense to conduct horse slaughter practices here. However, we can recognize that the consumption of horse meat will not stop around the world, and so we can only ask that they enforce humane practices. The slaughtering and consumption of animals is generally an accepted thing, but we would never even consider it with our pets. We as a group have not owned horses, so it is easier for us to send hypothetical horses to death, and so who knows how our opinion would change if we had that bond with one. So in conclusion, while we may never consume horse meat, we understand that other people will, and if the horse is going to die, it should be in a humane way.